what's some kind of keys for you in regards to collaborating with songwriters and how that's been for your journey?
Yeah, it's been a massive part of my songwriting journey. I've always worked with people. I can probably maybe think of 2 to 3 ruckus songs ever out of all of them that I could say maybe I did the whole thing, but out of, I don't know, well over 100, they've all been written with us in collaboration. And to me, music's just more fun when you're doing it with a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's parts of the process, like when I'm writing my verses or doing things, there's a lot of it where I want to go away by myself and I want to work on it and then come back and present the idea but yeah, I think if getting that feedback loop of working with others is really important. And I feel like I was really lucky or blessed to have stumbled into that as like at the very beginning, working with Doug, and then so that being a very natural thing for me. I know a lot of people really struggle with bringing other people in on their like ideas and their art. And it was became even way more evident to me, like the goal that is getting to collaborate when we moved to Nashville in 2010, and just seeing the level of discipline of just writing every day, like people having twice a day with a different person, like a session, like this person, that person. Oh yeah, we'll get together, let's write a song, let's just be vulnerable, let's just see what happens. And it's almost just like throwing stuff at a wall. And through that process, so much of you get I guess the more comfortable you get with being fine with putting bad ideas out, or some days it's good, some days it's bad, some days it's so bad you just let's just give up and go buy tacos and know what I mean. So some key relationships for me were so me and Doug writing songs. So I've usually always had someone around me who I would consider more like an instrumentalist, or someone who's more hands-on with instruments when I can. Because I obviously love lots of there's guitars and lots of things in the records that I'm just not confident enough to move fast enough to get ideas out. And I love being in the position of just like listening and waiting for somebody else great to do something that I can just point my finger at and be like, oh, that was sick, do that again. I think I enjoy being in the presence of people that do great things and like spotting it rather than being the person trying to do it.
So
I've always really enjoyed.
So you're talking about humility, which for musicians is a challenge, because when you only get that true collaboration when you are humble. You're like, oh, I need you, or I need something else, and then there's that just that courage again to be vulnerable. Again, vulnerable is not seen as it's not a very manly word, in a world of people closing off their hearts or their souls, but they don't realize that in your vulnerability and in your humility, collaboration really takes place, because you go, well, actually, I don't have everything, and let's, and there's massive connection creatively, like you said. You've worked for, I know for a lot of years you've worked with Jeff Duncan, who's almost like a completely different person to you, but then together you've created some classic. How did you work with Jeff on the process, like as an instrumentalist, and you as a?
Well, so we first met G when so we finished that first Ruckus record, and then we graduated Polytech, and then we no longer had a recording studio to work in because we graduated. They ended up giving us a key to lock up the building. We were there so much, at the Polytech.
Nice.
So Jeff was working. So he was we met him a few years prior working at the music store, and he was selling guitars and
that's right.
drumsticks to us at Northern Music was where we met G. And then and since he had set up a recording studio at his house and was he was doing all the backing tracks for I don't know if it was like Dancing with the Stars or one of those New Zealand
Nice.
TV shows where he was having to program, so they didn't use the instead of using the Duran Duran original, they just re-recorded like a MIDI version and then they could use it,
So they have to pay the old trick.
So he was doing that. Yeah. And then he had to have all that finished by Thursday to submit it, and then so nothing on Friday. So he had just randomly reached out through another friend to say, hey, if the guys ever want to use my studio, it's always open on Fridays because I'm going to be hanging out with my wife on Friday. And I won't be using it. So we were
nice.
like, sweet ass. So yeah, we just rocked up to his house in Tite Bay that first session, and then he just never left. He kind of got us all set up, and then we he picked up a guitar to show us, and then I was like, damn, that was a good idea. Play that again. And then we wrote that first. And then we wrote that song Freight Train. That was like the very first time we all sat down in a room, me, him, and Doug, and we wrote that. We recorded it. And then, we never
hold on. Freight Train. See, I didn't know that was the first song you wrote with Jeff, Freight Train.
The first day, yeah.
Wow. Because that
first hour of us sitting in a room together.
Well, the fact is that you're a surfer, Jeff's a surfer. It was the first song you did, Freight Train. When I heard it, I actually heard it at Parachute on the main stage, and it was at Mystery Creek. And I just remember hearing Jeff's like he starts with that big, distortion feedback kind of, and then he, and you know what it's like when you got those massive, man, I miss that sometimes, those huge, speakers, and you just got, I don't know who was on drums for you that day, but then he comes in with his guitar line, and then you're kind of in, your whole thing, and you could just see everybody go, oh, the impact of this, just the styles of, because you've got the love of Rage Against the Machine yourself, plus classic hip hop, and Jeff has got, he's, and the fact that you're both surfers, you're at Titahi Bay. Did you ever go out? We're getting off track. Did you ever go out surfing? Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So that's cool. I never
slept in my wagon. Yeah.
I never knew this, the history of that song. That's cool because it's still one of my favorite. One of my favorite Ruckus songs is Freight Train, especially through a huge PA.
Yeah.
It's just got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big guitar solo at the end. This is what blew our mind, like, because it was a computer recording setup he had, but it was still like real primitive times, right? And so, because the latency was so bad that of his amp, I think he didn't even have an amp. I think we were just using a plug-in. He had to have it turned off. So he does the guitar solo with no, like, you can't hear the guitar. He's just doing it in the room, and we can't hear it, and he can't hear it. And he's like bending notes and it has all the sauce on it, like the delay and the reverb. It's like the big rock anthem 80s guitar solo.
Yeah.
And then once he finished it, it's like a 32 bar solo at the end. And then we played it back and we were like, yeah, that's it. And
he couldn't even hear himself. His musicianship has always astounded me. He can just play like, like,
played it
epically.
with it muted because it was because of the latency. So he just played with it muted, and he was just bending the notes and doing the whole thing. It's a pretty legendary solo. That was pretty natural when me and Doug parted ways on the writing and stopped working together. It was real natural for me to just want to keep working with Jeff whenever I could. Which is what we did. Yeah, we became brothers.
Yeah, and obviously he's played a lot with you live. He went over with you to the States, and he's carried on producing, and he's producing at a really high level, working with all these different artists. So it's been cool to see his musical journey, and he's another person that's just kept going. And oh wow, there you go.
Just world class musician, producer, and just epic at drawing the best out of people and just making you feel awesome, you know?
Yeah.
It's like his gift. And it's like when you find, you know, characters like that, you just want to be around them, you know, because they make you believe in yourself. Yeah. You'd be someone I'd say the same thing about. And Jeff, you know, Micah, Tofi, Jono, yeah, so many people. In that circle. And I feel like I've just always, I don't know if I gravitate towards these people or if they have just gravitated towards me, but it's definitely the secret sauce.